Hello everyone, welcome to the latest edition of the Devon Education Services Safeguarding Team podcast. Today I'm really lucky to have Jenny Harris join me today to discuss the Adolescent Safety Framework, specifically looking at the school context assessment element. Thank you for joining me today, Jenny. First of all, I think it'd be really great if you could introduce yourself for settings who haven't met you before and just give us a really quick overview of your role within Devon.
Hi, Caroline. Thank you for having me. It's really lovely to be here. I'm one of the managers in the REACH team, which is Devon County Council's missing and exploitation team. And I'm also one of the operational leads on the development and implementation of the Adolescent Safety Framework in Devon.
Lovely. Thank you so much for that overview, Jenny. I think it'd be really helpful for us to just remind settings what the Adolescent Safety Framework is and why we introduced a specific framework to consider contextual risk for our children.
Okay, so the ASF was launched back in December 2019 and is designed to support contextual safeguarding approaches with our young people across Devon. It's underpinned by the research and development from the University of Bedfordshire and very much recognises a number of key principles in relation to adolescence. So firstly, adolescents are in a unique stage of development socially, emotionally and physiologically. So our work with adolescents really needs to consider this as we seek to understand how and why young people think, feel and behave in the way that they do. Secondly, we recognise that adolescents interact with and are part of a number of different contexts. So, as well as being part of a family, they're also likely to be part of a peer group or a school community or a community in the town or the village where they live. And within those contexts, both risk and safety may be present. And by only focusing on our work with the young person and their family, we're potentially missing opportunities to address risk and increase safety for them within the other contexts that those young people are part of. And thirdly, harm doesn't just happen within the home. Irrespective of where that harm takes place for young people, its impact can be just as detrimental as any other form of abuse. So, given all of this, as a partnership in Devon, we opted to create a framework for practice that supported both the responses to individual children through their individual plans, as well as mechanisms to understand and intervene in the contexts outside of the family home where harm can take place. And in Devon, we've put this into three context categories. So we have peer groups, schools, and communities or neighbourhoods.
Okay, so let's think about the school context element for the Adolescent Safety Framework. When would we be expecting a school to look at the ASF and start a school context assessment? And is this framework suitable for all settings, so primary and secondary?
So primarily the ASF does focus on exploitation. However, if a school is identifying a harmful culture within their setting or themes of specific concern and behaviours across the student population, we would ask them to think about whether a school-wide approach through a context conference would still be helpful. And I think with regards to whether it's suitable for all settings, I would say yes, it is. Although the Adolescent Safety Framework focuses on adolescence, the methodology that sits behind it can be applied in most settings. Primary schools may have to adapt some of the tools to be relevant to the age group they are working with and the issues of concern, as well as the intervention themselves and who would be involved in delivering those might look quite different.
Okay, lovely, thank you. So how would schools undertake that assessment? So where would they go to get the information and how would they present their findings?
All of the information on the ASF is held within the DCFP website. There are specific sections for different types of context conferences where schools can find the guidance tools and templates to support their work in this area. I'm always happy as well to be contacted for support and advice, as I appreciate that sometimes the information online isn't always the easiest to navigate, and initially it might feel a bit overwhelming. Essentially through the assessment, the school is identifying specific themes of concern across the setting and seeking to understand this in terms of impact on the students, what is already in place that promotes the safety, and what needs to happen next where the risk remains. There is a specific school assessment template on the DCFP website, and this also contains some helpful prompts on aspects of the school environment, culture, behaviours and safeguarding responses of the setting.
Great, thanks, Jenny. Okay, so what next? So schools have undertaken a school context assessment. They've identified vulnerabilities across their site. So what do they do now?
So the process is if that schools do identify vulnerabilities across their site, they would start by completing the school section of the Safe for Me assessment. This then comes into to myself at the moment via MASH. I complete a triage form to look at whether a context conference is helpful or needed, and then I'll go back to the school and request that they proceed. I also ask for copies of the school assessment and plan, and this means that we've got line of sight to everything from a central position. After I've made contact with schools to confirm a school context conference is the next step, then the school would need to develop an initial plan. And this should be formed directly by the assessment that they undertake, and actions should link specifically to the risks and the vulnerabilities that they identify within that assessment. And then beyond this, it's about moving towards implementation of that plan and bringing together the key stakeholders linked to the setting and any wider relevant agencies that can help deliver those actions.
Brilliant. Okay, so schools have now decided that they want to hold a multi-agency school context conference. How do they do this and who do they invite?
It would very much be down to the school to convene the meeting, and in terms of invites, this would depend on the needs identified within the assessment and who would be best placed to be able to progress actions to address this. You're essentially bringing together a team around the school. So, for example, if you're identifying concerns around substance misuse within the school setting, you might want to be involved in drug and alcohol services in the meeting and in the planning moving forward. The meeting itself would usually be chaired by either somebody within the school leadership team or the designated safeguarding lead. And all of the guidance around the agenda for the meeting and the templates for the meeting, again, is available online through the DCFP website.
Okay, brilliant. So, but what happens if they struggle to get agencies around the table?
It's a really good question, Caroline. I would suggest escalating that with the individual agency in question in the first instance. And if that doesn't work, raise this within the Devon Education Safeguarding team so this can be fed back into the DCFP.
Okay, great, thank you. So once schools have held that school context conference, how regularly should the group meet? And once all the concerns have been addressed, is it okay for the school to stop the meetings?
The frequency will very much be dependent on the nature and the scale of the concerns being raised and whether it's a dynamic picture. In terms of setting review dates, you want it to be soon enough so any drifting actions is avoided and any change in picture across the student population is understood, but also long enough that those completing actions or interventions have had the opportunity to make some progress and for us to start to see some impact from that. It really is up to the school and the multi-agency group who are working together on the plan to agree those timescales. If the concerns have been addressed, however, then absolutely it is okay for the school to stop the meetings. And we would suggest that the part of the final meeting provides space for reflection on the impact and the outcomes achieved through the context conference approach.
Okay, lovely. So in your experience, what type of supports have you seen schools get from other agencies when working within this way within the school context conference?
We've seen some really positive collaborative and creative work in parts of the county. A very recent school context conference has been drawing on links via the Community Safety Partnership, Trading Standards, school nursing colleagues, police colleagues and the local council. Another school was drawing on support from the Police Problem Solver, Y-Smart, the Youth Intervention Team and SPACE, so our youth service. And the type of intervention include implementing bystander approaches, seeking to increase site safety, offering targeted support to students, whole school approaches, theatre productions being brought into the school, awareness raising with parents and carers, and looking to increase safety for young people in the areas just outside of the school grounds. So the list of the collaborative work and the creative solutions that people are coming up with really just goes on and on.
This has been really helpful. Thank you for your time, Jenny. Is there any other information you think is helpful or relevant for settings to know when considering if they undertake that school context assessment?
I think it's probably helpful to know that if you are unsure about the school context conferences, how they work and what you need to do, you're absolutely not alone. But please do be reassured, there is a lot of information and guidance available on the DCFP website. And also you can always contact myself or Caroline for a discussion. And it's also always worth contacting other schools that may have gone through this process, so you can learn directly from them. We also welcome feedback around anything you learn from your own experiences of what works and what doesn't, as we're constantly trying to sort of improve how our contextual safeguarding approaches work and the impact that they have.
Lovely. Thank you so much for your time, Jenny. I really think that education settings are going to find this information really useful. We are going to produce 3 more podcasts like this over the next few months to give settings more information on the Safer Me process, peer context and neighbourhood context. So please watch this space. Further information, including links to the Adolescent Safety Framework, are on the DCFP website, and contact details for key people can also be found on that DCFP website. Thanks very much for your time, everybody.